We are again back with a special lecture on social theory and Indian society. And with us, we have a very special and I think one of the best known sociologists of India, Professor Paramjit Singh Jad sir, who has taught for almost more than 3 decades at Department of Sociology at Gurunanak Dev University, Amritsar. Paramjit Jad sir was the president of Indian Sociological Society, I think from 2020 to 21, and he was also affiliated with ISS as in the capacity of a treasurer. Also, he was a president of Northwest Indian Sociological Association. He completed his studies, PhD, post graduation from Department of Sociology, Punjab University, and he was also a managing editor of Sociological Bulletin and MC member of ISIS as well. Professor Judge has been working on diverse issues relating from caste, from hierarchy, exclusion, studying Punjab specifically, looking at issues of movements, Naxalite movement, Dalit studies, and also looking at culture. And some of his writings are also now there is a literature published in EPW and Bulletin on music, on culture, the new challenges that have come up. And he also published a book on theory. So, Professor Judge, welcome to RC1. And we have been organizing so many lecture series on different aspects, different issues related to theory, challenges to theorizations, different attempts to theory, uh, different dilemmas in approaching social theory from diverse set of social cultural contexts. So the floor is yours. You may take 50 to 55 minutes, and then we can have a question answer session.
Thank you very much, Dr. Suraj Beri, and also Dr. Rakesh Krishnan, who are looking after RC1, in which I always had an interest, but I got responsibilities of looking after many RCs like RC17 and then later on diaspora. So then I thought, no, it is time to just be a participant in these RCs. And I stopped this thing, but I was regular in RC1 at one point of time. After having said that, I don't know how long I will speak, but likely to be less than even 50 minutes. At Gurunanak University, one paper I taught right from 1991 to 2020 is classical sociological thought. And as a result of which, whatever I am going to say, because after retiring, I am not in touch with all theories and all that, the way one should be as a teacher, but not when you retire, it is a memory. But still you come across when you keep on writing and all that. So when I was teaching, I was looking into, obviously, I later on when this perspectives on Indian society came up as a kind of a paper introduced by UGC, and it was taken by every department of sociology in the country because it was part of what we call the UGC net kind of a thing. So therefore, that also I taught almost right from the beginning till I retired. So on that basis, what I'm going to share with you is something which I always worked on theories. And that was, what do we find in all these theories? Because I personally believe that after Talcott Parsons, sociology, social theory has come to an end. Then it is just fragmentation. And now we are in a phase when even that kind of generalization, which is now coming up in the postmodernist kind of theoretical frameworks, that will also come to an end. So was a long time back, sometimes in 1973, Talcott Parsons gave a lecture in another university in the same state. It was in his honor, in his works. The whole proceedings are published in American Journal of Sociology and Economics. And his background was economics, and his favorite economist was Marshall. And he said that after the mathematization of economics, all fun and enjoyment which you used to have by reading economics is gone. And I feel that sociology is also moving towards the same path with its complex statistical tests and the coming up of new statistical perspectives like Leodynamics and all that. After having said that, and since most of you have studied theory, you all know that sociology is the child of enlightenment, and enlightenment is linked with the rise of reason. And therefore, sociology is something which is connected with something which came up when the age of reason began. And it is because of this that we talk about sociology in terms of modernity and all those things. I'll talk about them little late when I speak. But along with this kind of enlightenment and other things, there was a fundamental transformation in the Western society, which we cannot ignore, because theories are this whole social theory which emerged in the Western these were the general explanations of the data and of the facts available to all these theorists in one way or the other. And those generalizations were made applicable to the rest of the world because everybody thought that all societies would move towards this kind of structures and other things. That is industry, capitalism, and all that. Another thing which happened in the West was that it was not confined to the European reality itself. It expanded. And it expanded because of the very nature of organization of its economy, and in which the discovery of America, and then I don't say discovery of India, because India was already there in a very, as a civilizational society for a long, long time, had witnessed empires which we are now listening. So therefore, they found the route to India. Kind of thing. But in a process, all these areas were colonized. What the West discovered, whether it is Americas or Asia or with a few exceptions, and then Africa. And so what has happened is that we had reports of travelers, that is we had travelogues, and then the writings of the administrators, colonial administrators, who towards in the second half of the 19th century, most of them were good anthropologists because they were trained in that. Obviously, anthropology was the society, or was the study of the others, the underdeveloped society. That was the idea. So when they constructed comparisons, they understood their own society as developed society, and they had very, very strong commitment that other societies would also move towards this path. But at the same time, they also encountered some societies like India and what we have now, Middle East, which had been very well developed, but certain, and China, of course. All these things were there. So after having said that, let me come to what I have seen is that as a teacher, I was also trying to make sense of that we have 3-4 major sociologists, classical sociologists who theorized, who were the pioneers. And what was common among them? That is one of my efforts to understand that, because if they were talking about the same society in which they were living, there must be some common thread among them. So I could find that to the great extent, the Herbert Spencer, that is Herbert Spencer, Karl Marx, and Durkheim, they shared one common view. Max Weber made a comment, but he was not committed to this idea. Kant also talked about it, but then he moved to something else. So they had one particular common element. The common element was that in addition to the studying capitalist society, they also tried to create an axis along which they could understand that society. So there were two axes in two theorist cases, but first of all, let us begin with Herbert Spencer. Herbert Spencer also talked about the increase in the size of society as a very important kind of element, that is population. But Marx in his German ideology, he talked about population increase and the development of division of labor into more and more complex phenomenon, because once you have more population, you need more people to be fed. And then Durkheim based his entire division of labor on this particular basis, that from mechanical solidarity to organic solidarity, you have this kind of a thing. This was one. Second is that everybody tried to understand society, particularly from, let us say, Kant, Marx, Weber, Durkheim, that what exactly forms the essence of a society. So Kant came with the development of ideas. And so he developed that how we look at the world. It was quite similar to later on. Later on, Louis Morgan also talked about one common element of human beings is that they all think. So in ancient society. And then, what happened that when we come to Karl Marx, he started talking about how human beings produce and how that production takes place, and how, because that is one of the important things for their survival, because he predicated his argument on two things. He says that all species have to survive, and in order to survive, they have to have food and they have to reproduce themselves. And on that basis, he started constructing what we call it certain terminology, which later on became terms, means of production, relations of production, and their development. So for him, that was the most important thing. But when we come to Max Weber, in fact, counter-argued that these were not the material conditions, but it was something very similar to what earlier Auguste Comte talked about ideas, but he linked it with rationality. And he said that rationality is the basis. And his basic argument was that rationality was derived from what he calls Protestant ethic. But obviously, people have found out that capitalism had already developed, much before Protestantism came, but it was in elementary form. So, when we come to Emile Durkheim, he takes a division of labor in addition to treating society as a moral community. Now, moral community is something in which normative structures become very important. But subsequently, since he was a functionalist, became a functionalist because he talks about functions. Later on, Talcott Parsons moved from the concept of society by making consensus of values as the basis of all societies. So every single theorist tried to find out something which is the basis on which you can construct the explanation, and you can generalize about that society. Now, this was something which was very, very important that they did this. Now, Now, let me come to Marx, because these people, some of them also wrote about India. So I will start from first of all there. Marx, the views were not direct. He did not have data. He based his all observations on India, which was from the travelogues and the colonial administrators in India. And even in Capital Volume 1, he talks about India. One of the things which is very, very comprehensively talked about is his whole idea of Oriental society, despotism, and control over water. But I will not talk about it. I am talking about something which was linked with his that kind of primacy on which he did. And that primacy was population increase. Now, what happens is that most of the British administrators, they talked about Indian villages as small republics, which are autonomous units of production and consumption. Obviously, our sociologists, right from Srinivas, we have refuted that kind of thing. It was not there. Ambedkar did it in a much bigger way. But I'll come to that a little later. But Marx also said something very interesting. And here the importance of population becomes very important. He says that in India, what happened that the population increase was expected to transform division of labor, but it did not happen in India because there was ample space available. The moment there was population increase in a village, then what happened that a part of that population, it moved out of the village and established a new settlement, which was identical to the previous settlement, that is village, which means that without changing division of labor, the new settlement was reproduction. It was congruent to the previous settlement in terms of its nature of division of labor. This is what it stated. This was very interesting. To what extent Marx was right is something which I'll talk about. I'll talk about three again, then follow that. Then let us come to Max Weber. Max Weber has written a whole book on this, on India. And he doesn't talk about religion in Indian society, he talks about religion. But what he discusses is society. He defines caste, he is elaborate, his whole book. But something which is very important in his arguments is that he says that capitalism, despite the material conditions in favor of India, India did not develop capitalism because it did not have rationality. And he talked about all kinds of things, that how this was the case. And to what extent he was right or wrong, I don't know. But we know that when the times when he was talking about, much before that, we have very interesting stories to show that the businessmen used to keep records, which he talked in his Protestant ethic and spirit of capitalism, that was very important. Let me come to Durkheim. Durkheim I have not found much on his views on India, only at one place. This was also a chance reading, not a chance reading, but reading a book which was edited by Vandana Madan, I think that was the name. And there was an article by Louis Dumo on Indian village. And when he was talking about this thing, then he mentions Durkheim. If I am not wrong, I can check. I could check what I didn't check. I think there was a book toward the century by Powell on revenue systems in India. And it so happened that Durkheim reviewed it, it seems. And Durkheim made a comment that the kind of revenue systems which have been discussed by Baden-Powell shows that he is talking about an archaic society, a primitive society. So from that way, his view on India was based on a work, but these two try to understand India. Marx also tried to understand 1857, a revolt or our war of independence. So, after having said that, let me just stop here and come to something very interesting. Because if we look at 19th century Europe, the way they looked at others was not for the purpose of understanding the rationality of the natives. I give you the example of a very interesting book, which is a big book, that is Sir Simon Fraser's Golden Bough. Now, Golden Bough is a book which has comprehensively dealt with different aspects of the life of what he calls barbarians, because Europeans are civilized. He's got knighthood. And then he talks about various rituals and festivals of the barbarians. One of the rituals he talks about is rain, rituals related to rain. And he argues that they are so backward, they are so traditional, they don't understand, no enlightenment, because they think with their magical rituals they could bring rain. Much later, Wittgenstein, in his comments on Sir Fraser's rain festivals and fire rituals, he says that we have to see. No, I am giving this reference because in India we also had practices in India to have rains. Because for us, Lord Indra is the god of rain. So this is that one question which is very important we should ask, that if these barbarians believed that with rituals they could bring rain, do not observe these rituals during dry season. They always do it during the rainy season, which means that basically the purpose of these rituals is not to bring rain, it is to celebrate rain. Though in India, during the rainy season, we had some kind of rituals to invoke God to bring rains and all that, but these are only in the rainy season. Now, after having said that, we must keep in mind that the view, as Marx said, India it only has passed. We have to understand they were the more developed than the rest of the world. Some of them were the masters of the world. They had colonized the rest of the world. They had in their own way, right to think about other societies in a way. And therefore, what I would do is that I would look at all these categories, starting from a little bit of village, about Marx, and then I'll go to caste and other things. But before that, there is a very important issue, which we find that this is also again 19th century construction, there is another axis around which most could be, put that how they look at the other. And that is what we call it tradition and modern. So the West constructed this tradition and modern in a particular way. Now, what happens is that when we look at India and other societies, and even the Western societies that we seriously study, we find these classifications are a problem. But the problems are in many ways. There is something wrong with the way the Western mind works, and there is something real about the traditional societies which the Western mind could not understand that way. I give you just one example before I move to these things, and that example is of gender. No, in the West, we have only two categories of gender, male and female. We don't have the third category. And because they are constructed as two binary opposition, which means that if we deal with the neutral gender, forget about the present time, even then they have constructed LGBTQ kind of a thing in which they have put, but biologically, they don't have this category of what we call it neutral gender. If you carefully read some of the experiments conducted by Harold Garfinkel in his book Essays on Ethnomethodology, you will find some of the experiments dealing with this kind of a thing. Taking one case of such a kind of a person, girl. Now, but if you look at India, in particular. Now, this particular category, deletes so many aspects, but I'll talk about India. Now, in India, we have three, that is man, woman, and neutral gender. Male, female, neutral gender. Not only that, Indian tradition has also, one of the things, when I go through Western works, I find they tremendously construct and evoke the symbols, the myths related to Greeks and others. So therefore, let me talk about this, that how theoretically India had constructed this male, female, neutral gender categories. One is that there is a separate space, social space, which basically they have been isolated. Only recently, people have started talking about. I think it started sometimes in 1970 when my friend Professor Satish Kumar Sharma did his book on Unix. But after that, it took a lot of time for others to follow this category of gender. But there is also a tradition, and it's very interesting that there is a concept on which now a book has come out. Saran has written, some other Saran, not A.K. Saran, about Ardhanari Ishwarya. I'll not talk about Ardhanari Ishwarya stories much, but two things I can tell because I have been finding it's very interesting. Because all myths, all legends are, constructed, but some of these legends and myths are connected with existing reality. And one that is, it is Lord Shiva, obviously, and Parvati. Well, this is one myth. And the myth is related with that there was at one time Lord Shiva and Parvati, they hugged each other, and they hugged each other for centuries, to the extent that they merged with each other. From here, there emerged a different identity, which was half male, half one. But this whole motherland thing, there is another story. And the story is again of the Genesis. Genesis, and the story is that there was vast ocean, and it was always moving. And out of this movement, a female figure emerged called Shakti. And after some time, she thought of reproducing, but for that she needed a male. So she created a male, and she asked him to do what she wanted to do. He refused because you have created me. Now, this is again, when this story came up, morality was also a little bit had come up in Indian society tradition. And so she banished him. Then, after thousands of years, she created another male who also refused, and she also banished him. Then she created, after again thousands of years, she created another male. And this male agreed. But he created two conditions. And the two conditions were, first of all, you bring back both of them back. And second was that after this, you will disappear and forget. You will come to live on my left shoulder. And this is the legion which was again constructed. No, basically, all these legends, all these myths, all these stories are there to suggest that, look here, that it is not simply that you have third gender, that there is an element of male and female in both the genders, male and female. That is, male's left side is female existing, like she came to exist, in his left side. This is this myth seems to be much earlier than what D.D. Kasambi talks about, that how in the process of struggle against Buddhism, that the Brahmins created black hero of the Yadus, because otherwise sex and sexuality was connected with what we call it Shiva. And there are stories in Punjabi. Prem Prakash has written these stories. We conducted data on Dalits, and suddenly one male respondent said that there is a woman living in him, kind of a thing. Similarly, there are males. We also find now males who would like to dress like women, but they are proper males. Similarly, among women, but it is not that visible because dresses become the same. No, these stories, we don't deal with it, but the reality is there, that this kind of what we call it explanation is available, that there is a feminine element in all men, and which is represented on the left side, and there could be masculine element in women, which could be on the right side, and we have stories and actual occurrences. So why I am trying to say is that there are certain aspects of all what you call quote unquote traditional societies which had their logic and explanation given in the traditions, because past traditions were always interwoven with the religious myths and all that, which perhaps is very difficult to decode in this process. Now I come to this whole question of village. Obviously, we know that village was not the way this whole British colonialists or their administrators constructed. But I started working on villages a long time back because it was byproduct in the beginning of what we were doing. And it was, first of all, was confined to Punjab villages. I found that when you have a village, even the surrounding villages also have the same gotra. Now, in Punjab, the gotra would mean that they have the same person who is their established forefather kind of a thing. And it is at many places, large number of gotras, because all the villages, whether anywhere you go, if you say this still which suddenly we find that there is always 5, 6 villages belonging to the same caste. Just 15 kilometers away from Amritsar, there are 4, 5 villages who have the same Gotra. So we went to one village during the time when we were studying terrorism in Punjab. That village had tremendous disturbances. And we asked, why is that all of them had the same Gotra, the surname, that is Shina? They said all of them have, moved away from this village and established new villages. This was their answer, whom we were interviewing. It was my query. So there are a large number of such things. Now, if we look at literature, I always find that most of the people who have written on villages, they talk about Thakur village, they talk about this village, Brahman village, particularly it is identified with the landowners. But there is only one sociologist who has pointed out this particular fact, and that is Krishnan Mukherjee in his book Six Villages, published by Popular Prakashan. In this particular book, he talks about 6 villages. Then he talks about the caste, the group, which is basically, and then he talks about 2, 3 other villages. And he said, basically, these villages were, they earlier were part of original village and then they moved out. And no, this particular thing suggests that there is a possibility that the population increase and division of labor had some connection. It is here that we need to perhaps work more, because right from Srinivas and Andre Bete and others, whosoever has worked on villages, they always identify villages. And then there was very interesting aspects. For example, in Punjab about villages. One was that suddenly most of the people have the same goal, those who are landowners, but there is one particular family which is having different Gotra, that is surname. And then I started inquiring, and they said that basically this was Nanka Dairy. The family did not have a son, so they, when they married their daughter, the son-in-law visited this place. And there is another very important indicator, particularly in Punjab, which is called Jathera worship. Despite the fact that most of the Jats have become Sikhs, but they still worship their Jatheras. And the same, it is always based on Gotra, which means that they worship. They go there on particular days and all that. Still on marriages, there are families who take the daughter-in-law to that place to worship. So in that way, there are certain parallel indications to suggest that what Marx might have argued about division of labor and population increase could be substantiated in some way. But the question of population becomes very important. It is also related to what we now call, there is a temple under the mosque. We sometimes, our mental categories are such that we always think perhaps that India was as populous as it is now. That is not the case. So, which also means that there were vast spaces. And remember it, most of India is tropical. And in tropical regions, the life expectancy is very low. And so population increase was not something which was, very fast. Nowhere it was fast. Despite the fact that starting from Indus River to right up to Bengal, we had a large, vast area where the land could support large population. But it had to happen over a period of time because the mortality rate used to be very high, kind of a thing, than other things. So this is one, what we call it, the whole question of village, in which we have so many people talking about that population increase brings about change, but it does not bring about change. Press Marx tried to explain it, but more exploration is essential. No, we have what we call it various perspectives, structural, functional, ontological. I won't talk about it, but caste is something which is a very interesting aspect because it's also again very interesting that the American society had slaves. But when most of the people discussing American society, they never talked about racism till recently. But when we talk about India, we generally forget to talk about its political economy and the social organization of political economy. We focus directly to the caste as if it is the central. So we have made it central. If we have made it central, then we have to see whether there have been some kind of expeditions linked with caste. This is one point I would like to make. Earlier, we had three theories. One was theory of ritualism. Another was race theory. If I'm not wrong, Risley talked about it. And then we have purity pollution theory about caste. And now, if you look at all these three theories about caste, we try to generally find that all these theories isolate most of the things about Indian society from caste. And caste is shown as something which is some kind of an ideological hegemony kind of a thing. Now, even here, let me take one which kind of what we call it emancipation versus Sanskritization. It also has a problem because the moment you think that people Sanskritize, it also implies that they accept caste ideology. They accept caste only then they would Sanskritize kind of a thing. But is it possible for us that when we talk about caste, we would isolate political economy and other dimensions of caste? Now, this was one particular thing which is very important. Now, it is here that we can only have examples. And we can only find out what actually has been happening. So we have to find out examples from different areas. Now look at, we say Brahman is at the top. Why Brahman is at the top? That in a predominantly agricultural society, the places where Brahmins are at the top also is that Brahmins are the landlords. They own land. Not example. It is not that they simply controlled what we call it religion and they were educated. No, at least we have another caste and we have evidence that that caste started getting education, at least from Mughal period. I don't know earlier period. That is Kastas. But Kastas have never been put in caste hierarchy. But basically, Kastas don't have the kind of power which other Brahmins have, it is believed. But do Brahmins have power in all states where Brahmins live? That is not the case. Look at Punjab. No, in Punjab, Brahmins don't have any respect of the kind because they don't have power, because they don't control land. So, which again means that whatever purity pollution thing we observe has something to do with the perpetuation inequalities and privileges based on some of the things in which they can control the rest of the people. Now, this is something which becomes very important. But so far, I think there was one person who tried to refute, one scholar who tried to refute this myth of superiority of caste, upper caste and others. That was B.R. Ambedkar. B.R. Ambedkar in 1920, when he had to give, 1929, I think, gave lecture at Lahore to R.S. Majis, which basically they did not organize because of his text. He gives two kinds of very interesting things, which I think is very important. I'll not talk about what solution he offers, but what arguments he gave about caste. One is that caste system is not the division of labor. It is the division of laborers. Now it's very important question that at what point of time that particularly the landlord class, which is also became the upper caste, they monopolize the resources in a way that the others cannot join it. And the second is that, and it's very interesting, let me explain it. The second thing is something which I never thought that in 1920s Ambedkar would be able to do. Why? Anthropology consists of two components. One is social anthropology, the other is physical anthropology. Physical anthropology has almost vanished because the idea of race and superiority of race is something which is gone. And it started demolishing due to Sir Cyril Bart's. Cyril Bart's was a psychologist in England, and all his life he studied intelligence quotient, IQ. And on the basis of his study, he concluded that whites are more intelligent than blacks. And to that extent that even in 1970s later on, some of the books like Experimental Psychology by Coleman, that was the standard textbook, he said that he has written it with the apology we write, but we would say that studies have proved that whites are more intelligent than blacks. But then one American student thought that why should I not conduct this test on the same subjects on which Sir Cyril Bart's based his findings. And to his shock, there was not even a single person available. And then they came to know that he had cooked his data. And mind it, he was awarded knighthood by the Queen of England for his greatest discovery that whites are more intelligent than blacks. And then we have another very interesting text which counter argues, but still we were having revolution in biology. That is Franz Fanon. Everybody talks about his other things, but nobody talks about he was a psychiatrist, so he counter argues that blacks and whites don't have different sizes of medulla oblongata. Because if you look at the animals, medulla oblongata is more developed than others because that is instinctual. And there was an argument that blacks have a larger medulla oblongata than the whites. He counter-argued. But in 1920s, Ambedkar argued against eugenics. And this is something very, very interesting. So one can see that these kinds of theoretical arguments about caste and then this kind of gradations, that how people are graded, and then we look at division of labor. It came from that there was ideology. That is what obviously the most favorite among the JNU people at one time, hegemony, Gramsci's, and supported by strong myths and other things, that caste was done, kind of a thing. Now, the moment that structure of dependence and control started disappearing, caste hierarchy started disappearing, even then, we do not find sufficient theoretical explanation of what made caste caste persistence at that time, earlier, and why caste is still there. Still is a kind of a question, kind of a thing. So what happens is that when we look at the existing texts, they have wonderfully discussed and provided us a panoramic view of Indian reality by using various perspectives. But at the same time, at this point of time, there is a need for us to look into that what has changed and can we understand that how this has changed and how the earlier explanations, all the other theoretical bases could be questioned, that why they failed to make a single explanation of caste if possible. My personal observation is that the reason was that they chose the wrong axis along which they tried to construct their story. Had they talked about Indian society and its political economy and social organization, we would have had much politically, which and particularly we got into what we call it postmodernism and we have looked at Indian society. We have to see that, I give you another example, how we fail. In terms of agrarian class structures, earlier Daniel Thorner did on Malik, Kisan and Mazdoor, and then there was a wave of peasant studies all over the world, its revolutionary character. And in India also we followed that and talked about it. And then suddenly there were talks about peasants, peasant movements. We have very good books on peasant movements. The Nagare immediately comes to my mind in sociology. But suddenly, from the middle of 1980s, but particularly in the present century, we forgot peasants and we are talking about farmers. No, the farmer was a category which was used in agriculture census data. Farmer was not a category of sociological analysis, it was a peasant. And now, suddenly, everybody is talking about, farmer, not the peasant, without working out the nuances of definition of a peasant and the definition of a farmer. This is something very, very important. So this is one question. Now, about it, I would just say there is a very interesting book. This is by a documentary maker of BBC, John Berger. John Berger lived in, I thank my dear friend, Dr. Raul Verma, for sending me from somewhere that particular text when I was doing something on it. This is he lived for 5 years in a village. And suddenly he started talking about peasant, landowners categories, very similar to what Daniel Thorner was talking. And then he says that there was a on its same title, Big Earth, in which he interviewed Dr. Shannon also, because he was the first to talk about peasantry from his awkward class. No, and Shannon says that peasants are the most sturdy class. Nobody could destroy it. Then he comes to his village and says that, but now they are being killed. Because technology has come, indebtedness has come, he ceases to be a peasant. Peasant economy is no more relevant for him. Now, if somebody living for 5 years in the developed world, working in a developed world village, and coming to the conclusion that peasant is dying, why is it that we are not thinking that why we have started using farmer category as a sociological concept, and we have said bye-bye to peasant. Now, this is something that, some various issues rise, because maybe that we need somebody from Europe or America to come and then tell us that it is no more peasant, it is farmer. I don't know. But tragedy of India is that we are living in what is called in my teacher in philosophy, you can say Professor Dharmender Goyal used to say, simultaneity of the contemporaneous societies. We have tribals, we have other things. So as a result, what happens is that wherever we study, we focus on that. We don't see. I am living in Punjab. Punjab was the first to have green revolution. Punjab was the first object of study to create mode of production debate in late 60s and early 70s. And obviously we have to see Punjab, that how this is happening. When theoretical concepts and other things, I'm not against them. I want them to be used, but used, and we should understand what is happening in the contemporary. But thank you very much. Thanks, Dr. Suraj, for inviting me to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It was quite an encyclopedic lecture from your side, and you did stop at an extremely provocative way by asking the question, what happened to the category of peasant? And I think that's something that we need to ruminate over a period of time. But I think there was also another provocation earlier in your lecture regarding the difficulty of decoding traditional aspects. So using my role as a discussant, maybe I'll ask her the first question. So, I mean, I'm just stretching it around. I was wondering what would be your advice to young and early career sociologists like me and Suraj and a lot of us in this talk. How would we grapple with this entire Indian knowledge system? Because that's something which is loitering and which is there in our background all the time. So how should we engage with it? I mean, what would be your advice?
Krishnan, my advice to every young sociology student is to read A.K. Saran.
Okay.
No, what happens is that what you are talking about, what the whole agenda is about Indian knowledge system, it has been, whole question of Indian philosophy, Indian sociology from that perspective and society. This was discussed long time ago. I was a young student when he was retired, and then he came to Punjab University to give series of lectures. And he has written a lot on it. And that was one. If you want to do Indian knowledge system, but if you want to make it a kind of a value issue, that our knowledge system was better, that was a serious problem. Because knowledge is a universal phenomenon. Human beings share knowledge. Now, take example, I went through Will Durant's Story of Civilization, all the volumes. The last one, which was not published, Age of Napoleon, is with me. I got it printed. He talks about that steam engine was first invented by Arabs, but they didn't know how to use it, what to do it. It was a toy for them. Like, gunpowder China, but they were used to celebrate. But then in Western society, they started working on it. We have so many things. Like again, paper came from China, but printing process started, in Europe. Now, what I'm trying to say is that we live in a world. There is a beautiful, sentence in Will Durant's one volume that is on Sicily. It says that the Sicilians are proud of their purity of race mixed with Jews, this, that. and he has named all those, this thing came. So, what I'm trying to say is that there is no such thing like that Indian tradition, knowledge system is something which is bad. There were great people who have written on it. I am not saying it. We should study them. But if Indian knowledge system is presented as an ideology that this is the system, then there is a problem. But this is how I would react to it. But we must resist ideology thing to saying that this is absolute, because knowledge is a continuous process of development. Theory is a continuous process of development. That is, it is not absolute. It is no. There is no absolute word stated. Why? What is the problem with religions? Religion's problem is that they treat what is said by the founder is the final word. I can afford that to say anything about God, but I cannot say anything against the founder of a religion, because it is here that it becomes absolute. So, same is the case with the knowledge system. We should be open, but at the same time. Now, I remember in 1975, because I had to study it next year as MA first year student, that it was decided that Indian social thought should be introduced in sociology. And then names like Swami Dayanand Saraswati and all that were suggested, and they were put when I was a student. Then our head of the department, Professor Victor D'Souza, told that particular committee that look here in academics, we don't receive it as such. We also criticize. Are you prepared? That is the most important. No, because when we talk about intellectual, production of distribution of knowledge and critique of knowledge. And that is something very important. And one thing about sociology, Rakesh, is very important, is that our concepts are not absolute. We have contested concepts. If you have studied sociology at BA level, you must be remembering so many definitions of caste are given, because we contest and we don't say one is wrong and other is right. Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for that clarity.
Rakesh.
Yeah, Rahul.
Yeah, just 1 minute, Rakesh. Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, Suraj, please go ahead.
Thank you, Professor Judge, sir. We have Arvinder Ansari ma'am with us. Would you like to share some thoughts, ma'am? And then we can also go to Professor Rajiv Gupta, just to reflect upon the
Thank you, Suraj. Actually, I'm in a car, but it is always a pleasure to listen to Professor Judge, and the way he narrates and weaves his lecture is so wonderful. The anecdotes, the stories. So, and I agree with him. I mean, the only thing I have to say is that he's absolutely right when he says, I'm using word absolute, which he's trying to negate, but I'm saying what I want to say is that knowledge is evolving, and I think that is what is very important. And the critical engagement with the discipline, with religion, with social life is something which keeps social sciences going, and I think that is very important for young sociologists to understand, to practice. That's all from my side. I don't know whether I was audible because I am traveling through a
Yes, ma'am.
We
place.
can listen to you.
Thank
Yeah,
you, sir. It's always a treat to listen to you, sir. It's always enriching experience. Thank you. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Rajiv Gupta, sir.
Thanks, Professor Paramjit, sir. It is
Ah.
always an academic pleasure to hear various speeches. Now, in fact, for last couple of days, about 45 or 50 days, which are very important as far as global polity and global economy is concerned, two important questions are emerging in my mind. And I'm not able to get a proper reply of that. Of course, proper reply cannot be taken because of the complexity of social sciences. The first question which is coming in my mind is science conceptually, theoretically, methodologically, or even empirically independent of capitalistic order, or science is now subordinate, particularly the notion of positivism is now subordinate to capitalistic world, and as a result science has been used as a tool to create the element of subordination for certain developing countries like Venezuela or Iran or even in Gaza. Now, what will be the impact of this kind of possibility on those theoretical constructions which came into existence just after enlightenment in the field of social sciences? This is this is question which I am also trying to answer. I do not know when it will get clarity in my mind. Uh, in fact, this particular concept has created a lot of issues. So I was reading a very important book. Probably you might have also gone through that. The book which is written by George E. McCarthy, Shadows of the Enlightenment, The Hidden Politics and Ideology of the Natural and Social Sciences. Hmm? Now, when I was reading this book and when I was observing this entire episode, this thing came into my mind. The second question, which is definitely associated with traditional Indian knowledge system, which is now a core element of national education policy, NEP 2020. It, I do not know whether I am correct or not, but it is again coming up in my mind that Indian traditional knowledge system is an attempt through NEP 2020 to create the superiority of a selective Hindu religious socio-cultural order. In fact, they are not giving importance to any dialectical relations of this kind of knowledge system with Lokayat, with Vedanta, with Jainism, with Buddhism, with medieval India, which constitute the totality of traditional Indian knowledge system. It is an effort. It is an effort to ridicule medieval India. I think they will not be successful in this, but medieval India is completely ruled out as far as CBSE or NCERT books are concerned. And secondly, when we talk about the contributions of D.D. Koshambi or D.P. Chattopadhyay or Rahul Sanskritan, everybody goes against with these scholars and talk about those ideas which are completely close to a particular kind of conservative Hindu social order. What will be the impact? Because you were talking about A.K. Saran. What will be the impact of this kind of effort of Indian sociological theory, particularly those theoretical constructions which have been put forward by Ramakrishna Mukherjee?
I don't have an answer, but there is one thing which I could mention. You just also confirm the kind of knowledge I have. I may be corrected. But I don't know, but how come that a person who wrote Ramayana lived in a mosque throughout his life and is still being talked about? Huh? This is one, which means that even the period which they want, which is being erased, also has people like Tulsidas. But
Yes.
about the first issue, what I have been going through is that capitalism is a social system
Yes.
in a way, but capitalism also linked with the industrial production process, mechanization.
Sure, sure, sir.
We have a large number of writers, starting from Adam Smith onwards to Marx. Capitalism and industrial system, they can be separated. So if you look at Iran, how Iran is able to do all this is education.
Yes.
And Also, the society about which it has been constructed that it is terrorist and fundamentalist has given education to its 95% women between the age of 15 and 40 after 1979.
Yes, sir.
And all the political leaders of Iran who visited, most of them were PhDs. And the Speaker of Parliament was PhD in mathematics. Now, the problem is education and technology
Yes, sir.
is something which may exist even when you do not have capitalist social relationships. That is one thing which we know that it is quite possible.
Yes.
But there are so many things coming up on YouTube who are just Americans are again making money. They know that after speaking against Trump and USA, the people of the world who are English knowing would watch them. So they are doing that. But very rarely you find few people who make sense. But if you get data on Iran
Yes.
and its education system, that is eye-opener. So the strength of why the people are united, because they are educated, they know what is meant by American-Israel threat.
Yes.
That's all. But the other thing about how this knowledge system, we have to see, but it all depends about that how we go through. Because I am a regular reader of Indian tradition.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I started with Shiv Puran, Vishnu Puran thing, even that whole thing. It is not because in my village we had a Brahmin family and Gita, Sukh Sagar, all these things I already know. All these stories I know. I don't have to see these things and read these things because I have been learning from it. So we are open to these kinds of things. But they are useful in understanding how myth is created and myth is constructed.
Yes,
And
sir.
that is very important for sociologists. Or if the Europeans can still use their mythology, why can't we use mythology as metaphor or symbol in our writing to make it more beautiful writing and also its meaning?
Sir, one question arises in my mind.
But
This is the last one.
ideologically, I understand your purpose.
And
You know, we live in an age where the construction of ideology works in both ways.
yes, sir.
People so always remember this. There is always a practical process of this kind of education. So that's all I can say. But obviously, very difficult to say what will happen.
But sir,
Future, the
one-
problem came with this.
sir, one
You
issue
know,
is also
one,
coming up. One issue is also coming up, sir.
One Norwegian sociologist wrote a book on this, making social science better. That we don't predict. We cannot predict because we are not dealing with natural objects. We are
Definitely.
dealing with subjects who have
Subjects.
consciousness, and it is not predictable. Yes.
Sir, one query is there. One query is coming up in my. When I was studying in Institute of Social Sciences, Agra, in 1970.
Professor Rajiv,
Sir, but this is last. This is last. I was studying. We were allowed to read Sociology Liberation Movement, which happened in 1968. Now, that kind of sociology liberation movement or critical sociological dimension are missing in various universities nowadays. What is
This is how it happens. This is how it happens. This is how it happens. We can't blame young boys. We can't blame young boys. Their orientations have changed. We did have girlfriends. Sometimes they have boyfriends, girlfriends. They have to meet. They have to see television. We never had televisions. We have to go somewhere. There are all so many things in life which people now want to do. They want to be more human in a way. But at the same time, they are being objectified by the market forces. For example, English language in which we are doing, it is the English language which is also, and we are internalizing their theories and values. All these things happen together.
Sure, sir.
Yeah,
Thank you, sir.
sorry, I have to make the rude intervention now. Sorry. So before I open up, we have three people waiting. I would quickly request Professor Anil, if he's still around, Anil Kumar, would you like to share your thoughts before I open the floor? Professor Anil? Okay, yeah.
Good evening, all.
Yeah, can you be a little more louder? We're finding it a little difficult to hear you, Professor Anil.
Okay.
Good to see you, sir.
The loud
Yeah, good evening. How
on
are
the
you?
loudspeaker at home. So because I was doing some other household chores and I was listening to his talk, and of course it is always a pleasure. And he has been my guru's best friend, and so it is always an opportunity to learn in the form of a blessing from him. I really enjoyed his talk, and then parallelly, I was wondering when I talk to my students, particularly in theory paper, what I have been not talking, missing, because how he sort of built a thread talking from the fundamentals of theory, especially of a discipline like sociological theory, and talking about the Western theories, and then linking it with the Indian theorists that we discuss in our classroom. I think it was wonderful, and I learned a lot from it. Although I do not have a specific question about it, there was one question, of course, on Indian knowledge system. Professor Judge, of course, gave us an excellent response, and I think I'll also be using that. I just need to ask sir something, because we have been very casually using, or rather interchangeably using, sociological theory and social theory.
Yes.
In the class of sociology. So more on this, if sir has to say something, Professor Judge, if he has to say something on.
It is finished it? Anil's voice is not.
Sociological and social. We have to see it as. Yes, sir, please.
We generally, but when we talk about social, basically we have to see theory. You know, how do we look at theory? And you who has philosophy background know that the construction of propositions which are interconnected and which explain a social phenomenon, basically at the micro level. But it depends that there's not much is difference. But what happens is that when we talk about social theories and sociological theories, people don't make much distinction. But sociological theory looks like more specific about sociology, whereas social means that it is also relevant. But nowadays, we don't have this division. Once I also asked my teacher, P.N. Pimple, that what is the difference? He said, don't bother. It is same. But that is what I can say. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Professor Anil. So
Thank you.
Rahul, Rahul, can you? Sorry, you had been waiting for some time.
No issues, no issues.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Firstly, just very quickly, it's always a delight to listen to him. being very nostalgic when he used to take lectures for us for our PhD and MPhil coursework. However, thank you for all the organizers and conveners. Sir, you quoted Will Durant. I would like to also quote Will Durant, as you also talked about Herbert Spencer, that civilizations begin as Stoics and they end as Epicureans. This is a consistent quote in all his books. My question to you, sir, is you talked about in the beginning of the lecture, you talked about about Talcott Parsons being the last most relevant sociologist. Is it because grand theories have been challenged by middle range theories eventually by Mertonian school of thought? And you, in the conclusion part, you talked about contested concepts as well. Is it that we are contesting theories so much that the entire fragmentation process is there within the entire structure of creating and testing theories in social research?
There are two questions within it. First of all, Talcott Parsons tried to construct a theory which he called general theory of social action, which would explain everything. And right from his structure of social action to social systems and towards the general theory of social action with Edward Shales, all these theories are attempts, as a result of which he gave us tremendous contribution in terms of concepts and other things. We still use particularism, universalism. But once you seriously look into his kind of a thing, there are serious problems in this theory, which should be there because this is how we go about it. Because after that, we don't have. The major harm in this kind of theory building was done by Robert Merton. Robert Merton, what he did was that he talked about middle range theories. And middle range theories, what happened that he narrowed down our research and he made it convenient for us to do research because now you don't need to have big theories. You have to have what we call it the kind of what we call it set of hypotheses and then try to work on it. It made sociological research very easy later on because it was highly misused. And that Americanism reached India also. And we also largely started using it, and now statistics and other things have come up. So that is something which has happened. I, in fact, forgot to talk about Merton. Thanks for reminding me that kind of a thing. There is another thing you said. What was that?
So I asked whether the way we are contesting concepts since the beginning, the concepts have been contested. Is it because that the theories are being contested so much that the fragmentation is happening? That there is no
There are
general...
both. It is both. One thing is that society is continuously changing. One is that though I do not agree with Lyotard that all determinants are local, but what Weber said that if you want to understand other cultures, you should know the language and other culture a little bit, other person. So if you don't know the language, you don't understand the other, and that is something. But this whole idea of contested concepts is something which came to in 1956, if I am not wrong, who wrote an article essentially contested concepts. And he says, take example, we talk about terrorism. I can give a lecture on terrorism that how the present understanding of terrorism is absolutely is wrong. Nothing to do with what actually terrorism is. And but that is not only even in democracy. The same thing is there. So that way, that is always there. The contested concepts.